Hey everybody, I'm April.
And I'm Missy.
And this is Sheela Na Gig.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. As always, we are so delighted to have you. And of course, each week we present and explore our own Sheela Na Gig, a woman whose strength and perseverance has led her to greatness, who empowers us, inspires us.
Yes, it may be somebody you know.
Yeah, it could be somebody you've heard of or know or
should know much about.
And that's the thing. We're bringing light. We're bringing light to these ladies, to our Sheelas, as we like to call them.
Yes, because even if you know a Sheela, we've been surprised by things you may not know about her.
That's right. We learn all kinds of stuff. So we're always excited to share it. And we are really excited because we just found out that we are an award-winning podcast. You may have seen our reels this week. We did like 3 different reels. That's how excited we were.
Yes, just screaming and shouting and jumping up and down because we had 4 acknowledgments from Women Who Podcast magazine. We came in second place for
a laughter and cheer category for our Caresse Crosby episode.
And second place for an impactful story on our coverage of Night Witches.
Oh, love Night Witches. In second place, in service to others as well, for Truus and Freddy, Oversteegen, as well as Hannie, Schaft, amazing women in World War II.
And finally, we came in third place for A Profound Nugget, which featured the cast members, the playwright and the director of the magnificent and riveting one-act play Feast.
Right. And I'm going to say cast member because it was a one-woman show.
That is, yes. But I put a plural on there.
Yeah, it's true. Shout out to everybody. And thank you to Kathy Barron and Women Who Podcast magazine for making this possible. We are truly so honored and delighted. And what are we doing today, April?
Well, we're mixing it up a little bit.
We are mixing it up.
In order to submit nominations for awards, we had to take what we thought was our best work and narrow it down to 10 minutes. Most of our podcasts run somewhere between 30, 40, and an hour plus.
It's mine. It's like usually over an hour for sure.
Right. Yeah, mine are a little usually skinnier, but anyway, we needed to come up with 10 minutes to show in each of these categories that we had an award-winning podcast. And today we'd like to play those 10-minute blocks for you.
Yes, 10 minutes or less.
10 minutes or less.
And shout out to editor Andy, who just jumped in and saved the day. And also, of course, to our editor, our regular editor,
Taylor Moyer, who did a lot of that for us as well. And because of their diligence and commitment to helping us, we got them in under the wire. We submitted on the last day. Truth be told.
And you may have even heard our episode where we discuss, are we an award-winning podcast? Where we are like kind of deciding what we're going to select. I mean, like, back and forth a little bit.
We did.
Opinions, different ideas. And that was kind of an interesting episode, I thought. Yeah.
But
Would you say so myself?
And you should. And with no further ado, I can't wait to show you, or I keep saying show you like you can watch this. You're listening. This is a podcast, April. But let's share 10 minutes of Caresse Crosby in
laughter and cheer.
Yay.
Laughter and cheer. Okay.
Laughter and cheer.
Here it is.
A little background for you. Women today can actually breathe a little easier thanks to a World War I metal shortage.
Okay.
So before World War I, women squeezed themselves into corsets. You may have seen pictures of corsets molded to their figure to fit the Victorian ideal of a voluptuous bosom atop a teeny waist. But since corset frames were mostly made of metal, which was needed for ammunition and other military supplies, the U.S. War Industries Board asked American women in 1917 to stop buying and wearing corsets to help their men win the war.
Well, what a sacrifice.
I know, thank God, right? Imagine, ladies, please take off that metal page. That's right. Here you go. Yep, don't need to wear this anymore. So this freed up wartime steel and women alike. That's right. In fact, according to testimonies from that time, the switch allowed the country to save up to 28,000 tons of metal.
That's a lot of corsets.
That's enough to build apparently 2 battleships. Do you think it'd be really comfortable to be working in a factory and wearing a corset? I don't think so.
I don't think
it simply wasn't possible to functionally properly wear the ultra-tight, ultra-restrictive corset. Thinking about it, suddenly I feel short of breath. Like, she danced in balls most nights and slept from 4 a.m. until noon. That's what you did in those days. You would just dance at the balls and then sleep all day, get your beauty sleep.
Well, how old was she? She was
a young woman because
frankly, that's my teenager's idea of the life. Well, they just turned 20, but yeah. All night, sleeping till noon sounds right.
Exactly. And that same year, the rebellious debutante had decided to wear a bold dress to a debutante ball.
Okay.
She had donned a stiff corset and tight corset cover beneath her sheer evening gown. But the corset cover, which she described as a box-like armor of whalebone and pink cordage, poked through her gown.
So scandalous.
Yeah, well, not even scandalous. She couldn't wear that. That would just be gauche. A whalebone sticking through. That's like, so because of her quite generous bosom, she couldn't appear at such an event without a corset.
And of course not.
So she needed an alternative. She needed an alternative. And she said to her maid, "Bring me 2 of my pocket handkerchiefs and some pink ribbon, if you would."
And she speak like that?
I don't know.
You're embellishing.
No, she probably had a New York accent.
Yeah,
go ahead, April.
Well, she probably did.
What'd she say?
Like, give me the corsets or give me the handkerchiefs, right? I can't go out like this. The bulbs are hanging out.
And I have a whalebone sticking through my dress.
No whalebones through the dress. That just doesn't work.
Anyway, her maid helped her sew the materials into a simple brassiere, if you will.
Oh, very clever.
See where we're getting?
I see where we're going with this.
Yeah, okay. Her invention was the talk of the party. Other girls crowded around asking how she danced so freely. And when she unveiled her creation in the bathroom.
I was going to say, and she unveiled this where?
She was all clothes. It's getting hot here.
And a debutante ball.
And she called her invention the backless brassiere.
The backless brassiere. Huh?
Right.
I could use one of those.
I know. So she married wealthy Richard Peabody in 1915. She had 2 children with him, and they basked in the social world of upper-class Boston.
All because she had a herringbone stuck in her.
It's not a herringbone, a whalebone, okay? Big difference, April. Okay, sadly,
I wasn't paying attention.
I want to go on to tell you about Crosby because she is just so amazing.
Okay.
There's a lot to tell about her.
Well, go for it.
So we're just going to keep going. 1917, Richard Peabody, her husband, enlisted in World War I, and he didn't return until 1921. Though he suffered greatly from his war experiences, as people do, and he returned being a heavy drinker. And Crosby actually is quoted as saying he only had 3 real interests. And they were all acquired at his schooling at Harvard, but just continued and made worse by his his wartime. And basically those activities were to play, to drink, and to turn out at any hour to chase after fire engines and watch buildings burn.
Oh, wow.
Why? I don't know why she said that. I guess he was obsessed with burning buildings.
I was waiting for chasing other women, but she's chasing fire.
I guess it's better that you chase fire engines than women, right?
I would
prefer that. I know, it kind of sounds like a dog or something.
All right, so moving on.
But the catalyst for Crosby's transformation was her introduction and eventual marriage to a man named Harry Crosby. So Harry and Polly were married in the municipal building in New York City, following it up with a telegram to Harry's parents saying, "Please sell $10,000 worth of stock. We've decided to live a mad and extravagant life."
Ooh, I love it. Mad and extravagant life. I want to live a mad and extravagant.
What if you got that telegram from your son? "Please sell $10,000 worth of stock. We've decided to live a mad and extravagant life."
I'd like to know where all that stock came from.
Right, exactly. What stock, right? Harry persuaded Polly to formally change her name. So here it comes.
Here it comes.
Right.
Because
they briefly considered clitoris, spelled Clytoris, before deciding on Caresse Crosby. Harry suggested that her new name begin with a C to go with Crosby. And so they decided, since they didn't use clitoris, they named their whippet clitoris. Of course. Why not? Come here, clitoris. Come give me some love. Well, it's spelled a little different, right? So.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes it something.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So they have this dog named Clitoris.
Okay, guys.
And her name is now Caresse Crosby. So despite having invented a bra as a teen, Caresse was an ultra-modern advocate of going bra-free at this point for all to see. She, in fact, attended a ball at the Académie des Beaux-Arts, riding a baby elephant and wearing nothing but a huge turquoise wig. They preferred to entertain guests in bed.
Of course. Where else would you enter?
They had this giant bed, and they dressed in.
Oh, and everybody comes under the covers.
Yeah, exactly. They all cuddle together. I don't know what else happened, but they dressed in these magnificent dressing gowns.
Ooh.
And of course, their whippets, clitoris, they had two by this point. They were clitoris, and then they had Narcisse.
For both of them. So what was I thinking?
Clitoris and scrotum.
We could do this all day long.
Oh my God. Okay, so clitoris and Narcisse are their whippets, and they would be part of the party too. They would just like jump on the bed with them. And
Everybody wants a dancing clitoris.
anyway, champagne and caviar would be served before everyone took off all their clothes and laid around in the bed. And then they also had this giant bathtub. So then it would end in this communal bath
Okay.
with Salvador Dali and Picasso and Ernest Hemingway.
Wouldn't every
Max
bath
Ernst
shouldn't
East
every
Nay.
bath end that way?
It should. Of course, and then they'd smoke some opium.
Why not?
They all had multiple affairs with one another. They traveled the world. They wrote poetry. They spent money like water, disregarding anything that resembled convention. So while Crosby's husband fell into a drunken stupor every night, she spent her time turning out pages of pornography.
Talk about an outlet.
There you go. There you go.
That perfect outlet.
And Anna East Nin observed that everyone who wrote pornography with her wrote out of a self that was opposite to his or her identity, but identical with his or her desire. She spent the rest of her life dividing her time between Italy and the U.S. and continuing to support the peace movement. And in her later years, she wrote, "I can't say the bra will ever take as great a place in history as a steamboat, but I did invent it." Yeah. And just before she died, a documentary filmmaker made a short movie about her life in her castle. He went to her castle and kind of interviewed her. And while giving him a tour, the then 70-year-old Caresse Crosby flashed her breasts to the camera. Of course she did.
Of course she did. The woman who invented the bra went braless for a good portion of her life.
It's true.
I love
it's
it.
true. I want to watch that documentary. I wonder if it's available somewhere. Time magazine declared her literary godmother to the lost generation of expatriate writers in Paris, an apt description, but a rather muted one. At a time when the role of a woman was sharply defined and controlled, Caresse did not merely reject gender constraints, she acted as if they did not exist at all. We should spread her story, free the nipple, and perhaps think twice before burning our bras.
That was hysterical.
It was so funny, and I loved how her husband was so into fire engines. He chased fire engines. I like to say like he was kind of like
A demolition.
like Dalmatian for sure. But what is coming up here for our second place for impactful story?
So for second place, impactful story, we have 10 minutes of Night Witches. And if you haven't seen the original podcast, heard. Goodness, I'm always wanting to think we're watching it and we're listening.
We're not watching it.
We're not watching, no. Shut up, don't make fun of my outfit.
We'd be watching it anyway, but we wouldn't be watching it. But
anyway, here is 10 minutes of Night Witches.
The Night Witches. And they are our collective Sheelas today.
Oh my God, the Night Witches.
But there is a story behind the names.
Like it's a derogatory term that people use toward women sometimes. And obviously it was a different time.
No. It was meant to be derogatory.
Okay.
Although it was given to them in a derogatory way, these women embraced it, celebrated it, and wore it with pride. So when Maria Raskova was granted the approval to start this regiment, she literally had thousands of applications. She had to select about 400 women to staff each of these 3 units. Most of the women who were selected were literally between the ages of 17 and 26. And they had just a few months to go to this training camp in Engels. It was a town north of Stalingrad. They had just a very short period to learn what most fighter pilots would learn over years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And get
but
out
they're
there.
women. They can do it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And they became proficient in not just in flying these planes, but in being ground crews and maintaining the aircrafts.
Okay.
So there were a lot of things they had to
So
do.
a lot of different jobs available.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if that wasn't challenging enough,
Yeah.
these women faced a few more little barriers.
I would imagine.
One was, as all female crews, they were taken less seriously than their Russian compatriots.
Mm-hmm.
They were considered little girls, less than, and so their uniforms were cast off uniforms by men, so they were men's clothing that they had to wear. And they had to fill their oversized boots. They had to stuff them with their bedding in order to be able to not literally walk out of their boots, because the clothes didn't fit.
Whoa.
They faced a tremendous amount of sexual harassment daily. And these women, instead of getting angry or feeling victimized, like it just emboldened them to try harder, fight harder.
The silver lining of being sexually harassed.
So exactly. You harass me, I'm just more on my game. But wait, there's more. Because these women were not only sexually harassed and belittled and not given the proper uniforms to wear, they also sort of weren't given the best planes to fly. They couldn't put parachutes in the planes. One reason was because they lacked the funds to get parachutes. And the second
Wait, so the parachutes went to the men, but not to the women.
not to these women. And also because the planes were so feeble and old, they had weight limits that couldn't allow for any extra baggage. So no parachutes.
Unbelievable.
The planes were usually crop duster planes from the 1920s. And they were only historically used in the military for training purposes. They were never, ever meant to see combat. The planes were mostly made of canvas and plywood. They were only 2-person planes.
So they're like these 2-person crop duster, very small, dilapidated planes.
Yeah, that you couldn't even bail out of because you weren't allowed to take a parachute.
Wow. Well, that's a lot of commitment on their part, because, you know, I might be excited at first, but after I found out like that would be my plane, I might back out.
Well, these women did not back out. They were badasses. They were really tough. And the planes could only carry 2 bombs at a time, 1 under each wing. And they were on missions to bomb like up to 18 bombs a night. So the way that they did it was that they set up 40 2-person crews at night, and each would execute between 8 and 18 missions, flying back and forth to rearm in these really feeble,
This is crazy.
No, it's crazier. This is just the beginning of crazy.
Oh my gosh. How could it get worse? I don't know.
Okay. So in order to bomb the Germans, they had to fly at very low altitudes. And in order to not be seen, they had to do it in pitch black of the night, which had the advantage of surprising the German opponents, the German enemies. So 3 planes would go out and 2 would serve as decoy distractions. They would have flares and kind of create a spectacle. And while the Germans were going to shoot down those 2 decoy planes, the 3rd plane would fly very, very low, turn off its engine so it couldn't be heard and you're making the right sound, and then they would drop the bomb. So getting back up was always described as a finger-crossed mission, because the odds of getting that plane to just sort of regroup and work its way back up was a real hope this works.
Oh my
kind of thing.
gosh. They're kind of like kamikaze pilots.
Kind of like kamikaze pilots. And they had to keep doing this multiple times a night. All three planes would do this would take turns dropping bombs, and then they would have to go back and reload and get more bombs. They also had no radios, no other artillery, and no other radar.
Are you kidding me? No, this just goes from bad to worse. Like I'm shocked.
They used maps, compasses, rulers, flashlights, pencils, and wait for it, stopwatches. And that was how they maneuvered. The other thing is because they had to do this at night when the temperatures dropped significantly, they also risked frostbite because they were often traveling in freezing temperatures. And it was so cold that if you touched the wrong part of the plane in that kind of cold, it could tear the women's bare skin. The main goal of the 588th was to disorient the sleep-deprived enemy, and soon after the beginning of their runs, it became clear that this was a really successful tactic. They were bombing their enemies and getting out undetected. And when the Nazis were thrown off and realizing that there was this regiment that was really getting the upper hand, they found out the greatest indignity of them all, that it was all women regiment. Like, how horrible is that? So remember when I told you that when they were going to drop the bomb, they flew low and turned off their engine?
Yeah.
And you made a sound.
Yes.
What was that sound? Do you remember it?
I think it was just...
Yeah, there was like this...
But I wasn't even trying to make this. I just was astonished. I was like, oh. God.
Well, interestingly enough, their planes made that sound when the engine was turned off.
Yeah.
And so the Nazis began to associate that sound with these women, because these women were dropping those bombs, and that was how they became known as the Night Witches. They flew in the night, and their planes sounded like a broomstick risking shh when you're sweet.
Okay. I'm sure it had nothing to do with them being women.
It's a no, that was a huge humiliation. In fact, the Night Witches became so feared and hated by the Germans that any German airman who actually dared to down a Night Witch plane was automatically awarded the prestigious German Iron Cross Medal. That's how feared and hated these women were.
Wow.
Instant medal.
Wow.
And despite their clear aptitude and success, they really wore that name, Night Witches, with pride. And they continued, even with that, to receive a ton of criticism and contempt from many of their male Soviet military compatriots. And they were arguably, I think it's fair to say, never given the appreciation and recognition that they deserve. So in the 3 years of their operation between 1942 and 1945, the regiment logged 28,676 flight hours. They dropped over 3,000 tons of bombs and 26,000 incendiary shells and conducted over 30,000 combat missions. Dang. And these women also managed to damage or destroy several landmarks that included 17 river crossings, 9 railways, 2 railway stations, 26 warehouses, 12 fuel depots, 176 armored cars, 86 prepared firing positions, and 11 searchlights.
That's crazy. I mean, it's crazy, like how successful they were. And again, that we have barely heard of them.
There were over 260 women who served in the squadron, and 32 of them died. Out of 260, 32 was a reasonably low number, especially given the poor equipment and poor support that they got.
Yeah.
They passed away from a variety of causes involving everything from tuberculosis to plane crashes and other combat-related deaths. There were 23 women from the squadron who were given the title of Hero of the Soviet Union. 2 of them were given the Hero of the Russian Federation, and one of the women was awarded the Hero of Kazakhstan Award.
Wow.
Their last flight took place on May 4th, 1945, when the Night Witches flew within 60 kilometers of Berlin. 3 days later, the Germans officially surrendered.
Wow.
During World War II, the squadron was the most highly decorated unit of the Soviet Air Force.
Oh my gosh. That is crazy. That's amazing.
That is crazy.
Night Witches, courageous, brave, unbelievable.
women. The thing that I loved about them was the more harassment and abuse they got, the more they just were motivated and took pride in it. They used it.
Used it as fodder. They used it as, and just positive energy toward being the Sheelas that they were.
Completely. Amazing. Yes.
Okay, we have another second place winner. We're so excited to place in so many categories.
Yes, we are.
And our second place for service to others is Truus and Freddy Oversteegen, as well as Hannie Schaft, 3 amazing women from World War II that you should know about.
We're going back to World War II era.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk a little bit here about the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands that really spurred the rise of many resistance groups. But there are very few stories, I think, as remarkable as those of Truus Oversteegen and her sister, Freddy.
Well, I know the
Oversteegen.
story.
So in May of 1940, this is when the Nazis invaded the Netherlands, and they began an occupation that would last until the end of the war. And after the Nazis advanced into the Netherlands, both sisters witnessed the horrors of Hitlerism firsthand. So their resistance work began when Truus was 15 and Freddy was 13. And this is when they began to help their mother distribute anti-Nazi leaflets. And they started helping her steal identity papers to help Jewish people escape from Germany. Mm-hmm. And they felt really proud to be part of this kind of sneaky, super important, network of couriers that helped spread the resistance's message. So Truus and Freddy soon caught the attention of Haarlem Council of Resistance's leader, Frans van der Weel, who visited the Oversteegen family and asked if the girls would join the resistance. He showed up at the door one day, and at this point, Freddy was just 14. However, she looked much younger, and Truus was 16. And with permission from their mother, the sisters joined the resistance at this time. Their mother gave them the simple advice, always stay human. The day that Mr. van der Weel came to the door, it was Trinja who heard his knock. She opened the door. She knew who he was. There were party connections, of course. She immediately let him in. He said he would like to talk to her daughters. And so Truus and Freddy were kind of peeking through the sliding glass door to the entryway, and they were whispering and kind of elbowing each other. They didn't quite know who he was. And they tried to, be calm, cool, and collected when their mother opened the doors and introduced him to the daughters. He suggested that what he had in mind was a little bit more subversive, a lot more violent, and a lot more dangerous probably than anything they had done before. But, of course, no one would suspect such young, beautiful girls to be capable of such deadly skills. So, again, the Dutch resistance, of course, was believed to be a man's effort and a man's war. If women were involved, they were, again, doing things like handing out pamphlets, anti-German pamphlets. So this was a very unusual proposal. Frans explained that Truus and Freddy might be called upon to blow up bridges, to blow up trains, and they would have to learn to use pistols, grenades, and how to detonate bombs. They said, sure. We'll do it. They took Frans up on his offer, and they officially became part of the Council of Resistance.
Wow.
Again, their young age, innocent appearance, and the fact that they were girls proved exceptionally advantageous, and they could move through the streets without drawing the same level of attention and suspicions that would have happened, of course, if they were adult men.
Sure.
Yeah. Here's these young soldiers. They're amidst the horrors of war, but they do not lose their interest in girls. In fact, it probably somewhat heightened their desire for some connection, for that normalcy found in female companionship. So the girls took complete advantage of this. So Freddy was the very first one, the younger one, to shoot a Nazi traitor. Her first method of attack was a drive-by. Truus cycled a bike while Freddy sat on the back.
Looking very young and
cute.
Innocent.
And then she would shoot people. They would often put on some bright red lipstick, and they'd put on like a drunken act, like a tipsy act.
Oh.
And then they would, maybe go into like a bar or talk to a soldier on the street. So this actually is from Everett John Daniels from the Times UK, and he describes one such encounter. The German soldier was propping up the bar, enjoying his beer. The Dutch girl, young and seductive, caught his eye. Maybe he turned on some charm. Possibly she laughed at his jokes. Would he like to go for a stroll in the woods? What red-blooded man away from home could resist the prospect of a tryst? He grabbed his coat, and the pair set off along the dark, overgrown path in the woods nearby. Along the way, they ran into someone, which was made to seem a coincidence. But he was actually part of the resistance. And this man said to Truus, "Girl, you know you're not supposed to be out here." They apologized, turned around, and walked the other way. And then the shots were fired from a hiding resistance member, so that man never knew what hit him. As Frans van der Wiel, who recruited them, had said, Freddy and Truus's confidence began to grow, and the sisters began to go on assassination missions by themselves.
Oh my goodness.
So it started out where somebody from the resistance would be in the woods, and they, one of them would lure.
Yeah.
But after a while, they were kind of like, their confidence grew, and they were like, "Hey, we can do this. One can lure them, the other one can shoot. We're good."
Wow.
Their big thing was, would you like to go for a stroll? They would act drunk. And after reaching deep into the forest, the other sister would shoot from a distance. And they referred to this as liquidating. Meanwhile, Frans van der Wiel was coming up with an idea. He decided that he had the right person in mind, and her name was Hannie Schaft, and she was also trained by Frans. She was a little bit older than them. So before long, they became inseparable, ready to take on whatever came their way. Hannie had this striking red hair, and it had always made her stand out. Even back
Which isn't a good thing when you're trying to be inconspicuous.
This is the thing. Like they talked about this, and all I can think is the first thing I think I would have fucking done is dye my hair.
Dye your hair, right?
I would have dyed my hair. Because the last thing you'd really want to do doing missions like this would be to stick out.
Right.
It started to catch the enemy's eye. On March 21st, 1945, Hannie failed to return from an assignment. Truus and Freddy were extremely worried, and they found out that she had been detained at a police checkpoint in Harlem. And though her hair was dyed black, the red color of her roots revealed her identity. Once Schaft was in custody, the Nazis immediately attempted to break her. They placed her in solitary confinement. They subjected her to relentless torture. But nonetheless, she maintained her composure, and she refused to give them anything. The Nazis knew they were going down at this point. And they were just very, thirsty for blood and revenge. They knew there was no way out. So what did they do? April 17th, 1945, Hannie Schaft was led to the dunes of Oversteegen by two Dutch Nazis, and without warning, one whipped out his pistol, aiming a shot at Annie's head. He missed.
Oh my God.
The bullet grazed her temple, and as blood trickled down her face, she uttered an almost surprised, "Oh!" Hannie's courage was evident even in her final moments as she faced her executioners and reportedly said, "I guess I shoot better than you."
Go, Hannie. Go, Hannie. Oh my God.
At that point, she was shot
Wow.
a second time, and this time fatally. Hannie was only 24 years old.
Oh my God.
And what's really sad, it was just 18 days before the Netherlands would be liberated.
Of course.
So as the Cold War began and McCarthyism took hold in the United States, communist resistant fighters became so out of favor that in 1951, the Dutch government forcibly tried to prevent the commemoration of Hannie Schaft's death.
Oh.
So freaking sad. So Truus and Freddy felt completely alienated from, their country that they had worked so hard to protect. They felt really embittered to see former Nazi sympathizers not held to account. Their work and other resistance members' bravery and selflessness and work not acknowledged. And throughout much of their lives, the Netherlands failed to properly recognize the women's achievements and sideline them just as communists.
Man.
In 2014, though, they finally received the Dutch Mobilization War Cross, receiving national recognition for their service to their country, and what the Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, called an act of historical justice. So many years after doing their work in the shadows, Freddy and Truus were glad for that public recognition, and they wanted their stories to be known so they could teach people, as Truus put it, that even when the work is hard, you must always remain human. Going back, of course, to what their mother had said to them. And it was, Freddy said, both a source of tremendous pride and tremendous pain. A 5-year experience that she never regretted, but that came to haunt her in peacetime for the rest of her life.
You know, that story never ceases to amaze me. It is so terrifying and profound and important. And I'm just so glad that we covered it. You covered it and it was acknowledged. And we hope that you enjoyed that 10-minute
Yes,
segment.
thank you. Or 10 minutes or less. We're not exactly sure
Yeah,
on these.
right.
But the thing about that one is like, as a mother, we're both mothers.
Oh, my goodness.
Can you
We
imagine?
we were both saying, no, not our daughter.
No way, no way. And those girls were just so
Brave and courageous.
and then lastly, third place for Profound Nugget, which we can thank writer Megan Garrity for.
Along with actor Aaron Schleback and director Lauren Cavelli.
Yes, and their play Feast.
Yes.
Let's give this a listen.
You know, you talk to people who are funny. I don't think that comedy is the skill. I think it is an approach. It is a life. It is a worldview. To walk the earth comedically is to walk the earth irreverently, right? So there is an irreverence, I think, that is second nature to comedians. They are quick to kind of puncture the balloon. And I was writing this play, and of course, what I want is, of course, every play to be hilarious and a huge hit. And I don't know, but I don't always get what I want. And it would have been great if this play was a laugh a minute, but I had so much grief and pain that this is a real high drama play. There's a lot of blood and gore. There's a lot of murder and mayhem. It's very punk rock. It's very heavy metal. That said, when you're dealing with emotions that are that heightened and that operatic, they can't help but be funny. And the juxtaposition of this 1,000-year-old magic woman who has built this body made of clay to put you at ease. And so she's tried to make the perfect body, the perfect mother's body, which in her mind is from Better Homes and Gardens. Like she has this like 1950s idea of Donna Reed, this like perfect hostess. So she comes out and she's like, oh yes, and I'm playing music on the hi-fi and I'm putting you at ease. But of course, that doesn't put us at ease because it's really weird. And you're like, why are you, right? But she's like, obviously I ripped his spine out and used to do dental floss, as you do, right? We're just like, do we? Is that what we do? It made me laugh, like this idea of someone who was not soaked in the socialization of contemporary American women. Like, what would a woman be if she didn't have the patriarchy shoved down her throat from its inception? And so many of our ideas about womanhood are social, right? They're not biological. Like this idea that women are not aggressive. I don't know if you've ever been a seventh grader, but there is, I don't know any seventh grader who's not inherently aggressive, right? So like a lot of our ideas about womanhood are put on us. We are socialized into. Yeah. And so it was really freeing and liberating to imagine a woman who didn't have those constraints.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. You're so funny, Megan. You're killing me over here. So, Laura, you're quoted as saying that the play shows us why the voices of the voiceless must be heard. And the epic poem Beowulf, when held up as an example of every incident of imperialism through time, suggests there's always a side we may have not been allowed to know without giving too much away about Feast. Can you expand on your statement?
You know, when I was young, I kind of learned two things that helped me navigate like how I was going to look at the world. One of them was always consider the source.
Right.
And the other one is history is told by the winners. And interestingly, Megan said that earlier, and that was a driving thing for me, right, when looking at this. And I love the construct in Feast where she took this story that nearly, every American school-aged child would read as part of their curriculum and then tell it from the perspective of the ones that lost.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the grief of a mother mourning her child, when what he did was stand up for what he felt was right. You could really look at any civilization, any country now or through the entire history of life, and find a mother with that story on either side. On both sides of every conflict, there's that same grief, sure, regardless of who's right and who's not right. But there's always a right, and so I feel like Megan really tapped into what's right in this when she said earlier, like, hey, Grendel's mother was right. She was a victim. You know, the side that wins, they're the ones that are in power, and they get to write it down. They get to make theirs the version that is remembered.
All right, what you think? Pretty amazing, right? Pretty amazing nugget.
I remember when we recorded it, just being so blown away by that whole conversation. It was so riveting.
Yeah. The storytellers are always the victors, right?
Yes.
The victors are always the storytellers, right?
Right.
Yeah.
They get to tell the story.
They get to tell the story. Nobody else does. So yeah. But we are so excited to share those with you. Want to know what you think. And if you haven't heard the whole episodes of each of these, we encourage you to listen to them. We think they're pretty good.
Check them out.
Yeah. So
And thank you so much for being part of our growth and development as we are rapidly approaching our first year.
it's so exciting. And thank you, Kathy Barron, for Women Who Podcast Magazine. We love
thank
what
you,
you
Kathy
do.
Barron.
We're so delighted and encouraged by everything you do. Thank you so much. And we hope you'll be back to listen soon.
Yes, we hope so.
Thanks for listening. Bye, everybody.
Bye.